Welcome back, and thank you again for those of you in person and live streaming with us. We've just spent the morning talking about mental well-being and work in how leaders like us can create the culture that allows people to thrive. Our final session today takes that fundamental idea and expands outward, looking at the journey of how we bring people into our organizations in the first place. The labor market and employee experience has certainly evolved in the last couple of years, from the pandemic to remote work, the great resignation, or our CEO likes to call it the great reshuffle, to changing economic conditions. The core questions for our conversations are: what pressing issues are leaders confronting in the labor market? What issues may become paramount in the future? And how's technology affecting all of this? So I can think of no better one position to weigh in on these questions than the two leaders on the stage. First, Dan Helfrich, who is a principal at Deloitte Consulting, where he served as chairman and CEO from 2019 until January of this year. Dan brings more than 20 years of experience fueling effective and efficient organizations. He's a pioneer in purpose-driven leadership and an advocate for team culture and continuous innovation. Dan, thank you for being here with us today. Also joining me is my colleague and friend, Mojgan Lefebvre, who is Executive Vice President and our Chief Technology and Operations Officer here at Travelers. She leads technology organizations with data, analytics, cybersecurity, and business operations. She spent her career at the intersection of business and technology, having been named the CIO to the CIO Hall of Fame and to the Forbes CIO Next list, which recognizes the world's 50 most innovative enterprise technology leaders. It is quite an honor to have that title, Mojgan. So she's also a recognized leader in talent development. I think you have 12,000 people that report to you, Mojgan?
Well, employees plus contractors.
Yeah.
8,000 employees.
Okay, I have 5. So I have 5 very talented people. So just last year, Travelers opened a new technology office in Atlanta. She oversaw that. She's just an amazing speaker on AI, data science, and other things. So thank you both for being here. Dan, you're going to get the first question, then I'm going to have a seat. You just spent the last 6 years, right, as CEO of Deloitte. How is that unique experience shaping your view of the current talent workforce and issues we face?
Well, thanks, Joan. And in the 12,000, I had 125,000. And so it shaped it in very profound ways. I must start by saying it's special for me to be here today. As Mojgan knows, in many ways, I was raised a traveler's kid. And there may be 1 or 2 people either in the room or on the live stream who were here 30 years ago. My father was actually the CHRO of Travelers, Tom Helfrich.
Really?
And so it's been fun to spend time with Mojgan and team. And a lot of my thinking about culture comes from spending time at Travelers, actually, as a teenager. And I remember moments like walking through the tower and developing a friendship with Archie, the security guard. And you sort of laugh, but my whole framework on leadership, to address your question, is that the biggest issue right now facing an organization of our scale, an organization of your scale, is that scale has the risk of is eating humanity, and scale and humanity fight each other in cultures. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us who get entrusted with the privilege of leading in organizations of our scale and stature to make sure that humanity stays alive in the decisions we make, in the way we communicate, in the way we try to engage. Because if you don't manage it, scale, which the markets love, and growth is a great thing, but if it saps us of humanity, then you become very ordinary as an organization. And so I've learned that in a lot of different ways over that 6-year tenure.
Okay, we're going to dig into that. That's a lot of employees to have to handle and manage. Mojgan, tell us about your technology journey at Travelers. So you joined us maybe 5, 6 years ago, something like that?
Over six in 2018.
Okay.
6+.
And so technology is rapidly, I mean, I just don't know how organizations like us keep up with it and employ new tools like AI on top of legacy systems that we've had for decades. So give us a little insight into what you learned in the last 6 years.
Sure. And well, first of all, a privilege to be here. It was such a high to be up there ringing the bell, and great to be with you, Dad. I mean, I'm a big fan. So I joined the Travelers in 2018, and while as we set our technology strategy very tightly coupled with our business objectives, and of course we were very focused on modernizing our technology foundation, focusing on the customer and employee experience. But I knew, and I'm such a big believer, that at the end of the day, it all comes down to the people. And so the first strategic priority we set in place was investing in our people, and that's what we coined it. And that's really been what we've been very focused on. Our goal was to make sure that we got to a point where every single person was doing the right work with all the skills that they needed and the tools that they needed. And so creating a culture where continuous learning and having that open growth mindset was going to be the case was really important to us. And so again, really focused on that. And so in order to make it happen, I hired a leader to create our dedicated tech and analytics learning organization, which now has been in place for a few years, and they've really built some of the best in class, I would say, learning pathways on a modern platform, and aligned that learning both to skills and to roles, because whatever gets measured actually gets done. We also established objectives and key results, or OKRs, which were very focused on dedicated time for each of our tech employees to have the time to do the upskilling and reskilling, making sure that the leaders were giving them the space and the time to do that. It was also very clear to us that we needed to shift from the traditional kind of reactive IT mindset and approach to much more of an engineering, design-oriented, much more automation, really proactive. And so that became core, really focusing on engineering excellence and creating an engineering culture, and then ultimately making sure that we had the right pipeline of talent. And so in 2018, when I joined, I think we were hiring 15 or 20 college grads. And so we've grown that to be around a couple of hundred on an annual basis. And we focused it on the top 100 computer science schools, because we knew that, again, to get to engineering, it wasn't going to happen overnight. And so again, really making sure that we had all of these elements in place. And so the interplay between technology and talent is really at the core of everything that we do.
I mean, you're competing with people who are working at Apple and Google and all these high tech companies that if you're a technology student, you want to go to I'm not going to say it, but a sexier company than an insurance company. I don't know, maybe. Like, how do you think about attracting those young people to Hartford, Connecticut, in the PNC business? Because it must be a hard sell.
Sure, and we are, again, regardless of how advanced technology is, I'm still a big believer that some of the core engineering roles you need to have, because again, to be able to leverage those technologies the right way, you need to have that critical thinking. And so we are competing, in fact, with the Amazons and Googles and others of the world, and for that top talent. And so it's about, first of all, making sure we're positioning ourselves as a technology company as well. We spend anywhere between 1.5 billion plus annually, and Alan talks about this all the time, on technology and data and analytics. And so ensuring that people know that, that's more than many startups, tech startups, even make. So, and then the work that we do is really exciting. I mean, we are a data company at the core of it. We're making decisions around risk, and that's all with information. We're not a manufacturer. And so the ability to invest that much is exciting and do really great work. And then it's about going to where the talent is. And so that's why April of last year, so I'm a Georgia Tech alum. That's where I did my computer science undergrad. And so we opened our tech hub in Atlanta, which I think is a very tech-rich city. I mean, there's a lot of companies that have moved from Silicon Valley to there and are hiring very close to the Georgia Tech grounds. We have a phenomenal office that we actually moved up to the 15th floor of the Coda building on the grounds of Georgia Tech, really having access to all of that talent. Where on the different floors, you've got these data scientists that are working. And so we're recruiting aggressively. We have over 100 people there. We have a plan to grow to over 200. We actually, increase our space for that. And so it's, again, it's about positioning yourself the right way, changing the way you go to market, and then being where the talent is, and making sure that we're giving our people the tools, and then that they're working on exciting new things, because they don't want to come and
That's right.
Do COBOL programming.
Well, and what our data would say, it's interesting, is for tech talent, brand isn't actually the sexy differentiator. It's learning pathways and it's agency to work on really interesting things. Those are the two things. Learning pathways. People, particularly in the early stages of their career, they want to see an organization that is investing in tangible learning, because people appropriately view that as the currency that's going to help them as their career move forward. So to the extent you're investing in saying, here's the investment we're making in tangible certifications and tangible growth plans, you can compete with Apple and Alphabet for that talent. And then agency is about saying, not only do we have really interesting data things we're working on, but you as a 23-year-old engineer, you're actually going to be able to roll up your sleeves and be in it, applying new skills in AI or otherwise. If you both sell that and then you deliver it, then your both recruiting and retention of that talent will be leading in the industry.
Completely agree, 100%. And she's doing it, by the way. She is an exceptional.
I know, she's stealing some of our people.
She is? Oh, good. Good to hear. All right, let's talk about the current labor market. So demographics, the birth rate is down. Our kids are getting married later. They're having less kids. Immigration policy in the U.S. over the last couple decades, many decades, is kind of upside down. We're not attracting the people we need. And we're retiring. Baby boom generation, 10,000 of us, I'm the last year of that, 10,000 of us want to retire every day, right? Look at my husband there, right? So we actually, no one wants to work until we're 85 years old. We are going to retire. We do not have enough kids to replace ourselves, and immigration policies. So the labor market shortages, right, and the wage gains we've seen, again, got exacerbated during COVID. So talk to us about the current environment and how business leaders need to think about the labor force.
Well, we'll stay away from the current environment.
Okay.
And policy associated. By the way, I think there are some people who want to work till they're 85.
They do?
I think we have good evidence of that. The premium right now is on skilling, and we have a macro responsibility as a country and as leading employers within the country to invest in the education system and the job skilling system to get new skills and to evolve people's skills. And so what I'm pretty heartened actually by the pace at which across public, private sectors, academia, curricula and training programs and policy initiatives are leaning into skilling. And look, I'm a tech optimist relative to the intersection between labor market and technology innovation. And so in that reskilling, we are seeing and will continue to see, I think, productivity enhancements as a result of the technology innovation that's happening. And so I think with that cocktail of factors, we can navigate the shortage that you describe at sort of a demographic level.
Okay, so Mo, thank you. So Mojgan, how has tech changed just in your career? I mean, you've been a techie forever, right? You went to school for that, you trained in that, got your MBA from Harvard. So you've been in the business environment. So what trends in tech do we expect going forward? Or what are you seeing now? What is going forward?
Look, I think there's some things that are constant and then some things that are new, as Dan is saying. So let me maybe think about that as from two angles. One is when I think of technology talent, one thing that I've always believed in and I think has always been true is that, the best technologists are the ones who understand what business problem they're solving, who really understand their end user, their customer, whether it's the employee population or the customer or agent broker population in our case. And so once you understand that, then you can truly leverage the right technology to solve that problem. That's always been the case. I think that's even more true now with tools like AI, generative AI, and more. The other trend, though, that we've been seeing is, what we call kind of full stack, or I tend to talk about it from like it's a T-shaped skill set, meaning you've got expertise in one or two areas deep, but then your ability to navigate across the software development lifecycle or whatever value stream or value chain you're thinking, the ability to have breadth across all of that is pretty critical as well, so that you can change roles and that you're not siloed. So having that T-shaped skill, having the kind of full stack of skills that you need, I think is becoming more and more important, and that can kind of navigate from business to technology and vice versa. Then the second thing I'd say is with the advent of generative AI and technologies that are really now allowing, people who've never coded in their lives now do vibe coding, right? Like vibe coding, the term was coined, several weeks ago, and now there are like thousands and thousands.
Say it slower. What did you just say?
Vibe, V-I-B-E
Okay.
coding. So it's like
Vibe coding.
you never coded, and now there's like this vibe coding happening, or vibe marketing, or like people who weren't doing something, and now with the help of a tool have the ability to do that. And so business folks, so like non-technologists, are becoming technologists in a way. So again, the domains are blending, but I do believe that enterprises still have the responsibility to make sure that they are enabling all of their employees to really become technologists, to understand technology. So a couple of years ago, with the sponsorship of Alan, we established what we call our Tech Foundations. It's a 12-module, kind of bite-sized set of trainings online. Again, you can do at your own time. And we encourage every single one of our 30,000 employees to take those. And to date, we have around 7,000 plus or so who've actually taken and finished those modules that are focused on cybersecurity, data, AI, and more. And so, these are some of the trends that I'm seeing.
I love it. And by the way, Joan, I'm excited for your vibe coding era. I think it's going to be exciting.
Well, if anybody knows me, I mean, it is bad. Right? My family's over here. They're like, Mom, you can't do anything.
No, anybody can vibe code. But Mojgan, I think, gave some really important insight to sort of the employee base writ large. We have a lot of executives in this room and watching. And so I want to share what I've been pushing a bunch of my clients towards, and we've pushed ourselves internally. If you think of the world of, I'm going to give you three categories of people: tech aware, tech savvy, and tech fluent. Okay. If you sit around a management table, as all of you do, many of you sit around in many, I'd ask you to assess the percentage of your management table in each of those three buckets: tech aware, tech savvy, tech fluent. And what I'm seeing, and we're starting to do some research on this, is management teams that have a ratio of more than half of their people are only tech aware are really going to struggle. Management teams who have no one that's tech fluent at the table are really going to struggle, because at the end of the day, so many of the decisions you're confronting are technology influenced decisions. And if you don't have people around the table debating with actually the context of technology evolving at the pace that it's evolving right now, then you're putting yourself at a big deficit relative to competitors. And so if you think about it that way, then premium on upskilling management team members, premium on upskilling board members,
right,
and assessing that is a really interesting thing for a management team to do right now.
And I love that you call it tech fluent, because that was actually like what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that every single one of our employees was tech fluent. And then you're right, like you've got to model the way as leaders and be the ones who are doing it first and foremost.
I love that. Let's talk about how to build a team. And so as I'm calling you out, Mojgan, because I'm just admiring what you did at Travelers to build that team almost from scratch. I mean, we clearly had technologists before and very brilliant people, but You brought them in. I'm going to go to Dan first, so you can think. But Dan, how do you build highly functional, engaged team that's worker well-being? We just talked about mental health in the workplace. What has been your experience? What's the most successful thing someone could do tomorrow in their business to build that team who wants to work together, highly energized, and loves their job?
Yeah, I'll give you two things that I have found to be extraordinarily successful. I like to talk in what I call, and we've sort of branded, everyday equations. These are things that you tell people you want the everyday behavior of them as individuals in the organization to take on. And the most influential everyday equation that we applied, and it builds on the panel we had before, is that your well-being as an individual is greater than Deloitte's well-being. And then live up to that. What does it actually mean? I'm telling you as the CEO that if you find yourself in a situation where you're debating about how to spend time, where to focus, etc., and you feel like it's a choice between the health and well-being of Deloitte or the health and well-being of you as an individual, I want you to choose you. And that, as a cultural norm to build a team, has been extraordinarily powerful. The second technique, and Dr. Adams referenced it in a different context, is, to me, the best teams debate. And what does a good debate look like? On things relevant to the workplace, not things related to politics. It looks like people of all levels and experiences having an unmoderated discussion where there's a free exchange of ideas in a civil way. Everyone thought I was absolutely crazy. We did a company-wide debate on what our return to office policy should be.
I'll bet that was interesting.
Unmoderated. When I say unmoderated, I mean, it's not like people submitted things and then the executive team decided which we would publish.
Right.
It was an unmoderated discussion, and we learned so much, and people learned so much from each other. But at the end of the day, what happened more than anything is we suddenly had a team that felt like no matter where they sat in the organization, their voice actually had a chance to influence the conversation. And that's been super powerful.
And where did you end up on your remote work? I didn't look at this up. I should have, but where did you end up? What is your policy?
Well, so we did this debate 4 years ago.
Yep.
We've evolved it over time. Our policy is super flexible to match the rhythms of our clients. I mean, we're in a professional services environment. And so given that there are no norms and standards within the industry, we've got to be malleable, but we make sure that there is rhythm of in-person interaction at our corporate university, in our offices, in a periodic enough basis. So even if you're serving a client that happens to be a primary remote client, you're getting enough cultural engagement.
Mojgan, did you want to add to that on building teams? How did you build your team?
Yeah, building teams. I mean, again, for me, you want to build the most kind of empowered teams that really own decision making, but certainly you got to do it in a way that's aligned to, the outcomes you want to achieve. So getting to we called it autonomy with alignment. So how do you build teams that feel empowered, that feel like they've got the ability to make decisions without having to ask for permission? And this was really a big move for us, right? Going to where people are really nice at travelers, so they always want to make sure they're doing the right thing. And so a lot of times maybe they felt like they needed permission from management. And so really that move needed to happen. And so really focusing on, evolving the way that we worked and looking at our operating model and then saying, how do we learn from the outside? So Alan took a group of us. We went to Boston, we went to Amsterdam, we visited a bunch of large organizations that had transformed themselves digitally. And when, what we realized was you're moving away from being these, doing these projects where they have a beginning and an end to where You have teams set up to build products and platforms that are going to stay. So once you build the product, then you've got to kind of continue to make it better. And that's how technology companies build software and work. And so we wanted to transform to that. And so we came back and we changed our operating model. Again, very hand in hand, technology and business together, focusing in different parts of our business, and really moved from this project-based to this product platform-based type of small cross-functional teams of engineers and business people sitting together with specific goals that they had to achieve. And so they were all driving towards the same thing. And so that was absolutely very critical to us. And then making sure that the teams knew that they had decision-making power. And, you know, except for like at points in time, of course, they've got to go up and down the chain. But again, these teams of teams really became much more autonomous. It's a journey, by the way. It's not like, I'm not saying we're fully there yet, but we have evolved quite a bit. And that's been very, very important in making sure that, you know, people own their decisions, are taking action, and, you know, can drive outcomes.
It's interesting, you know, Mojgan said autonomy with alignment. I'm seeing some organizations talk about freedom within a framework, but I think this is the magic culturally with this multi-generational workforce and this environment, is how you actually acknowledge that what you are seeking to do is combine empowerment and standardization, which is a really nuanced needle to thread.
Yeah.
But when she says autonomy with alignment, when I say freedom within a framework, that's what, and the organizations and teams that navigate that mixture of empowerment with standardization and clarity and norms are going to be the winners. And right now we have some organizations that are probably overly fixated on the freedom or autonomy dimension,
Yeah.
and others that are confident that if they have the framework defined and get everyone aligned, that that's the answer. I think the magic's in between.
And it was really helpful, though, to really go out and visit with companies, because I remember it was the CEO of Fidelity's Wealth Management who, you know, they'd done this whole agile transformation. And she said they started out with a lot of the autonomy, and then it was chaos.
Yeah.
And so very quickly they realized, well, we've got to be aligned to going all in the same, towards the same target. You know, we may take different directions. And so that was absolutely critical. Look, I think when it comes to, you know, call it whatever you want, digital transformation, or anything, the technology is important, but it is absolutely not the most important thing. It's like much harder to do the change management, the adoption, ensuring that people are clear on where they're going. And communication is always at the heart of all of that. So the people part, the culture part, the mindset is as important.
Dan, you talk about leaders that undervalue something related to the talent workforce. Can you talk about that for a second? What is most undervalued?
I think what's most undervalued is contrary opinions. And again, and this gets back to my commentary about debates, but I observe so many leaders in the teams I'm close to and the clients that I serve who are really anxious about contrary opinions. They see it as a sign of weakness. They fixate mentally on the existence of people and opinions that disagree with them and pay it too much mind, and therefore try to bury it. So to me, the value of the respectful contrarian is undervalued right now.
Okay.
And the leaders who are, in my mind, confident enough to live in debate and contrary opinion because it makes people better, that's the recipe for long-term engagement to rise.
And what about letting people fail? So there's this big stigma on your head. You're a big loser if you lead a project and it's just failed miserably. How do you recover from that? How do you give people the grace to recover from that? I mean, do you tell them to fail fast? What is the recipe for failing and then emerging?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there's obviously been a lot discussed and written about this. I think failure is a bit of a dramatic word. Like, we grow up, at least in this country, and in education, failure is rare and apocalyptic. the receipt of an F on something, it doesn't happen at the rate that we want what you're referencing or is commonly referenced as failure in the workplace to happen. And so to me, it's about learnings that come from things that didn't go as well as we expected and actually celebrating them. So one of the things I did that turned out to be more powerful than I thought it would be is at big meetings we had, I would talk about losses we had in the marketplace. So in a business
that gets people
in a business like ours, you get in the habit of celebrating winning, and I got in the habit of getting people on stage and on Zooms and talking about what we lost and why. And then it becomes more of a cultural norm that maybe this isn't failure in the way we think about failure as a society. Maybe it's actually about learning and actually seeing really impressive people with great careers talking about losses in pretty visceral terms can be powerful.
I mean, that definitely gets your attention, but it's risky, right? For a leader like yourself to talk about the failures out loud and share it with other people. And
I mean, that sort of gets back to my philosophy, though, is if I don't see it as risky, and I don't want leaders to see it as risky, because we are surrounded, if we're leading large organizations, we have, quote, wins and losses happening by the hour. And so if you create a stigma around loss that elevates it in cultural importance, then I think you're setting a tone that doesn't allow people to learn.
Or innovate. I mean, how do you innovate without taking some risk? And, with no risk, without taking risk, you really don't know what the outcome is. And so if you want to get to perfection, I mean, you're stagnant. So you just absolutely have to create that, what we've called our test and learn. Like one of our cultural beliefs is test and learn. So meaning it's okay to try things out. Yes, it may not work out, but failing smart, failing smart, learning from it, making sure everybody's learning from it, by the way, the fact that you're sharing in large settings, I think that's critical because you want to make sure someone else doesn't make the same mistake. And so I think that's absolutely critical to organizations that want to evolve and really innovate. You have to.
Okay, we're going to get to audience questions. So if you have one, please raise your hand. I can go on and on and on here, but we have to be out of the room in exactly 15 minutes. So I want to give you an opportunity. We have some incredible leaders up here. Any questions for them? Anyone? How to lead teams? How do you retain people? So this happens a lot, right? You get really talented people, you train them, you think they're highly engaged, and then they just went to a competitor for some reason. You're just throwing up your hand saying, how did this happen? What did I miss? So how do you think about those employees that might be halfway out the door? How do you identify them, right? What do you say to them when you think they might be thinking of departing? I mean, technology is, it's a tough business. People leave all the time.
I mean, look, I think you've got to think of retention as a long-term strategy. And so how do you create a culture and an environment where people want to stay and they're not leaving just because somebody else is offering them something more? I mean, Dan said it first, right? Like we can compete with other technology companies because even if they're paying them more, if we're creating an environment where they feel like they're learning, we're investing in them, that career progression is visible and accessible, that they're thriving and they have control of where they're going. I think those are all critical things. I think it's too late if it comes down to where they want to leave and you've got to convince them to stay, then you've done something wrong. So I think it's really about creating that culture, making the investment upfront, making sure you have an environment where they feel like they're growing and learning at all times.
Interestingly, and this is a little bit different given the nature of the business that I led, but I spent a lot of time actually trying to get people to celebrate people leaving.
Tell me about that. Because when someone leaves me, it does not feel good.
So I'll tell you a story. 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, two younger technologists, innovative people, really high performers, people I was close to, mentees of mine, told me they were leaving, told the firm they were leaving. And they wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And I got a lot of really senior people in the firm saying, like, Dan, how could you let this happen? Dan, what counteroffer do we need to make to get these two people not to leave? And I said, well, hold on a second. We've given them a great platform to start their career. They have some ideas they want to see in action. And my view is we should celebrate them and hope that they're wildly successful. Fast forward 10 years, I just hosted our whole team in Vegas at a meeting we have every 2 years in front of thousands and thousands of our partners. And these two guys were on stage, Russ and Achal, and they've started one of the fastest growing, most innovative healthcare companies in the US called Cabinet Health. And they told the story to all of Deloitte's leaders about what it meant to start their career at Deloitte and what it meant to have their lack of retention celebrated and supported. And it's interesting, your CFO, Dan, is a Deloitte alum. And I'm sure there was some partner who, when Dan decided to leave, it was more than a few years ago, but when Dan decided to leave, got, a demerit for a high-performing, high-potential person leaving. To me, I view it the opposite. We've seeded the world with great leaders who are going to go do awesome things. Hopefully not at a competitor.
You do have competitors. I mean, the consulting.
I do.
So building the culture, building the team, allowing people to fail, talking about what success looks like. I mean, to see success in your business, you have to have the metrics, right? The data and analytics and the numbers and the P&L, all of that. But I want to talk about technology to you, Mojgan, and building a career in technology over time when things change so rapidly, right? And so, I started my career without any computers. I know a lot of you in this room who might have gray hair or no hair, right? We didn't have computers, honestly. I know I'm old. But the point is, someone like me who still wants to be productive, but I don't have the skills. I don't even know where to start in technology world because you want everyone to be technologists. I'm not a technologist. So how would you convert someone like me or older cohorts to care about being a technologist?
Look, I think you're more of a technologist than you probably think, by the way. And by the way, when I came to the US at the age of 19 to go to college, I had not seen a computer in my life either. I thought I was going to be a doctor my whole life, came to the US, had to support myself. I realized very quickly that was like I couldn't. So what was the next best thing to do? Go into computer science. But in any case, so I say start with the 12 module kind of tech foundations that we've set. That's one. And the other thing is, I don't know if any of you, like, if you haven't downloaded ChatGPT, by the way, onto your phone, I would highly recommend, it's an app, you just download it. And it's probably got the best kind of like voice recognition, natural language processing capability. Like, we all know that Siri is terrible, right? Like, Apple's technology when it comes to AI is not that great, at least. But if you talk to ChatGPT, you can actually capture your voice, and its translation is just incredible. Like, I'm just amazed. And so you've got the ability to ask it anything. And so, Joan, whether it's recipes or, I sometimes actually ask it to match colors of clothing for me, or if it's like actually deep technical questions or healthcare questions or anything, and you can upload, information to it. It's incredible. So you're much more of a technologist than you think. And so you can probably even ask it, tell it what you wanted a program to do, and it'll tell you what the code is. And so you're a vibe coder as we speak. So download the tools and start using them.
Okay, we have a question that came in from someone who registered. Nicholas Zucco, commercial accounts manager at Fairway Risk Solutions, wants to know, how could businesses embrace AI without stripping purpose and fulfillment from the human workforce? So again, how do you, go ahead.
No, look, I mean, and that's a great question. It's like, how do you think of AI? Is AI going to replace us all? And, I mean, again, I think leverage the right way with like a responsible approach to it. I mean, AI can absolutely enhance human capabilities. I think of it as, every one of us have now the best executive assistant that we could ever wish for at our fingertips. You just have to take the time, by the way, to interact with it, talk to it, ask questions, give it as much context as you would to a coworker, and have that feedback loop with it. And so if you do it, again, done the right way, making sure that you're keeping the human in the loop as you're building solutions, leveraging AI, I don't think it necessarily needs to strip the human element away. Now, is it going to be leveraged by bad actors for bad things? Absolutely. But again, I'm sure that between both enterprises, thinking about it responsibly, and then the regulators, I think that it can absolutely be leveraged the right way. And, I think it can help science reach parts of the world where we just did not have the resources to make happen. And we heard Rich talk about the fact that, we don't have enough people to provide mental health education for everyone. And so you've got to leverage technology. I think of AI the same way. I think it can do things for us that we could never imagine in the world.
And corporations need to put their money where their mouth is. Like, we're here on the 15th anniversary of the Travelers Institute. The Travelers Institute is a great example of a leading corporation choosing to invest in research and on topics that are on major societal issues. Well, we started 6 years ago, long before ChatGPT, an Institute for Ethical AI, because we saw coming this set of topics. So we need the leading corporations in the space to prove that the headlines around things like ethical AI are backed up by true research and thought leadership in a way that will shape the course of the industry and ultimately shape the public policy that's going to come in the AI space that right now people are very tentatively embarking on.
Regulatory bodies, I mean, you heard I spent, more than a decade on Capitol Hill. They're very slow to regulate technology. And that's one, because I think a lot of them, again, are older and don't understand it. They don't even know where to start, I'm going to say, half the time. So how do you think about regulatory regimes around privacy or other, and is anything Congress going to do, this year going to even be relevant in 2 years, right? So things are moving so quickly. I don't know how you think about that.
But look, we're working very closely. Our teams are working very closely with the regulators, and actually kind of the responsible AI framework that Travelers was the first insurance company to put that in place, and it's published on our website. And we're working, a lot of the standards that we put in place has actually become what the insurance regulators have actually considered across the board. So I think it's a lot of collaboration. But again, at the end of the day, I think enterprises, as Dan is saying, like, it's incumbent upon themselves to make sure that they are thinking about it and, doing it, leveraging technology the right way. And by the way, leveraging technology is not just AI, it's like other technologies as well that you've got to think about.
Well, and, Joan, I live in DC and spend a lot of time on the Hill and with folks there. I'm trying to encourage a different twist on the advice I gave management teams around tech aware, tech savvy, et cetera. I'm asking congressional offices and committees, tell me about the hiring screening you're doing right now for everybody, including your interns and your entry-level hires. From your time on the Hill, you would not have had a technology sophistication screen to who you're interviewing and who you're forming your offices with. Well, if you change that, and then you get constituent mail that's related to technology things, then maybe you're having a more sophisticated conversation. And maybe as the technology evolves at the rate it is, that you're more likely as a legislator to have the agility to pivot. So I think that's a place. And to your point, public service and related, we need more technology fluent people in the conversations, not just at the elected representative level.
Right. So our time has flown by. Anybody have one last quick question we have to get out of the way? No burning, nothing. This is all crystal clear. You're going to implement all these things tomorrow in your business. Listen, a couple of things before I address my current panel. I want to thank you all for your engagement, not just today, but over the last 15. And we really do mean that. Please give me feedback on this today or anything we do at the Institute. We love feedback. Tell our CEO what you like, what you didn't like. I love constructive feedback, right? Sometimes I don't listen to it, but I do like getting it to keep us grounded. So with that, I want to thank my terrific panel and you all for coming and for staying. Thank you. Thank you.